Hello everyone, I'm live today to talk a bit about escape rooms. I'm sorry to the people on Twitter who are watching me, I'm a little bit wonky on there. But apart from that, this is all good. This should all be working today. So, I'm going to talk to you today, a little later than planned, I'm sorry, about escape rooms. I've got some questions that have been submitted to me from my Google Forms, which I've printed out. I'm much more organised this week. And if you have any other questions, you can always put them in the chats. And also, after a quick rundown through the questions, I'm going to talk to you through quite quickly, not in as much detail as I can, about how I create the puzzles for my escape room. So if you've got other questions, please put them in. I'm on 3 different platforms at the moment. I couldn't get onto YouTube for some reason, so I'm not on YouTube today. But I'm on 3 different platforms, so I won't answer the questions live, but I will print them off and do them next time, or I'll just respond directly to you in the comments. So, first of all, I'll start with some of the comments that I got from last time. First of all, someone asked me how to use it remotely and how to still get the knowledge across. So, these types of games that I make, personally, when you use them remotely, it's so easy. You just give the student a URL, they log in, and they play. And you can assess how they're doing by seeing how many questions they answer, when they finish, how long it takes them to finish, where they get stuck. You can ask for feedback from the students, all these kinds of things. So if that's your problem, if you're worried about how to remotely assess, the best way to remotely assess is to have check-up points with them. How did they get on? Did they get to this point? You could even have you gotten past the headmaster, for example, or have you managed to find the ladder? All these sorts of things. Or you can just wait till the end and say, oh, did you manage to get this far? Or whichever one it is that you did. So that's how you can assess periodically throughout the game. You can also ask them how long it took them to escape, or you can monitor that yourself by saying, here's the game, you've got this long to complete it. If you're asking me, that's what I assume you're asking me. If you're asking me how to actually use it remotely, you can just give them the URL and they can go to the web page and they can play. I'm talking personally about my escape room games here. Other people set up their escape rooms differently. I can't talk about how other people would use theirs because the setup may be quite different. But the type of escape rooms that I use, the virtual escape rooms I use, that's just all we do. We give them the URL, they go, they click on things and they play the game, they learn, that kind of thing. The second part of your question is, how do you get the knowledge across? Well, it is a game, but it's not just a game. They're not only playing here. So if you have played my escape room for teachers, which is at teacherescaperooms.com, you'll see that I'm teaching teachers how to use escape rooms. So when I do that, I get knowledge across by they have to read a certain page in the diary or in the book, or even if you wanted to, you could make them go off and Google search something else and come back with the answer. So that's how you get them learning at the same time, because they need that little answer, they need that bit of information, but they need to take it from somewhere else. And they get that information, and that's how they manage to learn whilst playing. So not only do they have the option to play the game and they're enjoying and they're involved, but they also are able to learn whilst playing. So I think that's what you're asking me. Okay, it says here, I'm secondary and I teach business studies, which is very theory-based. That's not a question, but that's fine. I'm secondary and teach business studies, which is very theory-based. So again, coming back to the game that you could play of mine at teacherescaperooms.com, that's very theory-based, because I've done a lot of study in this area and I've read a lot of papers and a lot of books and I listen to a lot of very, very knowledgeable people. And sorry, silly comments. And and that's much theory-based there. There's a lot of theory in that. So if you are interested in putting across something, to teach something that has a lot of theory, you will have to send them to gather information to get further in the game. And it's still a lot of fun, it's still a lot of playing, and even though it might feel like you're labouring the point, You can send them to read a particular book, a particular page of a book, or even a whole book, and have them come back later and carry on playing the game. So the way you would get the knowledge across in business studies, I don't know anything about business studies, so I can't give you an example question, but you would be able to give them a particular standard maybe that they need to understand, and then they would need that knowledge to get further in the game. I hope that made sense. I hope that was your question. Okay, another question here just says creating. So I'm assuming you mean how do we create the games? There's lots and lots of different ways. I'm going to go over at the end, after I've done the question part of this video, I'm going to go over how I set up my puzzles for my escape rooms. Again, everything I say is just for mine. I don't know how other people do theirs. Well, I do know how some other people do theirs, but I can't give you insight into other people's games, but mine personally. When I create my games, I've gone through quite a process of creating my games. I started out with Google Sites, Google Forms, which I think the majority of people do. I found them very limiting. I think they're good for a beginner if you want to just start making escape rooms and you don't know where to start. Google Sites is a good one. You can put a picture up, you can ask a question, you can lock it with a code or the correct answer, and then they'll see the next picture. Just picture to picture to picture. I found it very limiting for what I wanted to do. I wanted my students to be able to click on things, pick things up. I also wanted the option for my students to be able to look around the room that they were trapped in, if you like, and be able to assess the situation, pick up a book, read some very factual, knowledgeable information, maybe some theory, and then use that in the game to advance to the next step. So Google Forms didn't suit me. I used it for a little while and I moved on from there. After Google after Google Forms, I used Boom Cards, which I highly recommend for people who want to start doing these kind of games. They are fantastic. You can link slides together, you can have people put in answers, you can have multiple choice. They are set up ideally as task cards, but I only use them for escape rooms, and I really, really like them. I think they're great. However, I no longer use Boom Cards for my escape rooms because when you learn how to do something and then you want more from it, I wanted more interaction from my students. I wanted them to be able to firstly pick up objects. I want them to be able to pick up an object, have it in an inventory or a backpack of some kind, and then use it later on in the game. So for example, in my teacher themed one, the teacher needs her cup of coffee, as we do, and I want you to go answer a particular question about gamification that you found the knowledge for. Then you are rewarded with the coffee cup. Take the coffee cup back to the teacher and give it to her. Now that's not the sort of thing you can do in Boom Cards, because Boom Cards is point and click, but not in the same way. So I moved on from Boom Cards. I moved on to Java, which is a bit of coding and a bit more complex. It's like a game engine, and it's designed really for games, people who are gamers. But it was fantastic. I'm still using Java a lot, and I use that quite a great deal actually. But again, when you get to a certain point and you're done with that and you kind of want to move forwards more, I wanted to move on to creating games where whole classes, particularly now that we're back in lockdown in the UK and people are doing a lot of work online, I wanted people to be able to get the URL, go in and see their classmates in the room. So for example, if you were playing and your friend was also playing, you would see them go over and pick up the coffee cup, and then maybe you would have to say to them in a text, in a chat, or even in the game, hey, we need to give that coffee cup to the teacher so that she'll give us the next key to the next door. So it's more teamwork and it's more collaborative. And I wanted my escape rooms to be like that. I also wanted them to be able to pick up knowledge separately and bring it together so the learning is more a collaboration. So, and Java didn't do that. So again, I've moved on slightly now to 001 Game Engine, which I am a very complete new person at, and I'm struggling with a little, but I'm getting there. So That was a big answer for a very small question that just says creative, one word. Thank you for asking though. I think that's what you asked me. Maybe it wasn't. Okay, the next question was timing. I know it said almost no time, but even the initial thinking of ideas to use would take time, and then pulling the resources together. Even with pre-made takes time, as they need to be altered to fit your curriculum class. Okay, so you mean how long it takes to use them to teach. So if you wanted to, I see what you mean. If you want to make your own, yes, it takes a long time. Especially if you want to get to the point that I'm at, where, like I say, there's multiplayer, there's lots of things involved. It's a very time-consuming process. I do it a lot now. I can make a game a day. That doesn't sound very quick, I know, but believe me, that's a lot quicker than it was in the beginning. If you buy pre-made, you shouldn't need to alter them to fit your class, particularly because altering my escape rooms would mean altering the code, and you wouldn't be able to do that. So what I'm essentially saying is you would need to make sure you bought the correct room for your class, the correct game for your class. And if there wasn't a game for your class, I hope that you would contact me and ask, because I make them all the time. I take requests all the time. Please feel free to ask me if there's anything that you need that there isn't available. I'm happy to make them for you. Just send me a message and I'll make it. There was someone, I didn't print it out because it wasn't in my Google form, but there was someone in a Facebook group who asked me if they sent me the questions, would I make a room for them? And I said, I would. I'm happy to do that. But if you do want that done, you need to understand that when I make the room, I will also be putting it for sale in my store. So I won't be making it for you personally. I will be making it and putting it for sale in my store. So if you want that, you can have it. And if you supply the questions, I'm happy to give you a discount. Okay, that was that question. I'm afraid to get started. I think that's the question. I'm afraid to get started. I'll be trying this out in the summer. Okay? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Like I say, Google Forms is a soft start. Boom cards, definitely easy. Very drag and drop. Don't be afraid. How much time does it take to prepare? I'm going to go on to that in a question. I'm going to go on to that after questions. I'm going to talk about how I prepare my puzzles. It can take varying times. Once you get used to it, it's quicker. These take too much time. I don't think that's a question either. They do take too much time. They take up too much of my time. What software do you use? I've already covered that. I couldn't finish the game. Okay, I'm sorry. It was quite tricky. It was intentionally tricky because there's a reward for teachers that managed to finish the game and get out of the school. I didn't think I made it that tricky. If I did, let me know. I'm happy to give you clues. I'm sorry if you couldn't get out. Pre-made escape room would be nice, and I could fill in my own questions. Now, this is something I dabbled with recently. I used PDFs, and you could fill in all the questions you wanted them to answer, and then it would populate throughout the game, and you could do it for any subject you liked. This worked, but it would only work on computers, desktop, laptops. It wouldn't work on phones and tablets, which most of my escape rooms do, because it just doesn't. So I'm working I'm working on ways to do that. It's not at the top of my list at the moment. I have a lot of others going on. But it is there. It is on my to-do list. It's something I really would like to give teachers, the ability to type in any question and it just creates this game for them. And that's all they have to do. And like I said, I did play around with doing it with PDFs, with Adobe. And there is actually, I have got an example one that's for free. I think it's in my Teachers Pay Teachers shop. It's not in my Ginger Teacher shop. But if you search for the Ginger Teacher on TPT, I'm pretty sure I made it free because it didn't match the needs that I had for it. So you can play with that and see how you get on. But that's only a taster of what I wanted to do. So I will be playing with that a bit more and see if I can make it so you can fill in your own questions and the game will populate with them. I got stuck a few times in your game, once with the scroll and once with the recipe. And then the cakes on the table, there was no change. So it hasn't been able to complete it. The person that wrote this, I'm assuming that they played the game the instant I made it because I found 3 bugs in the very first run of the game. That was that the scroll wouldn't open and that was the cakes got stuck. And then after that, I fixed the bugs, but I didn't put an arrow in. So when you were on the scroll, if you had to click in the corner to escape, I put the arrow in now. So you should be able to escape. I'm sorry there were bugs right at the beginning, and I'm sorry that you were so quick off the mark and you got the early version with the bugs. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you for your help. Oh, that's nice. I got to the point where all the cake ingredients I couldn't put in the microwave. Are you looking for hints on the game? You need to print out the recipe. In the computer room, you'll find ways to do that. I got stuck on the scroll. I'm disappointed as I want to be able to finish. Again, that's probably something that came very, very quickly. Okay, so they're all the questions that I got through the Google Forms. Thank you, they were really, really interesting, and I'm pleased that people have been playing the game. That's really nice. If you do want to play the game, it's at teacherescaperooms.com, and you can just go and play it. It's free. You can go and play the game to see how you get on. Now, that was the main things that I wanted to cover. I wanted to answer anyone's questions. I also want to now very quickly go over. I did a very short reel of this, a TikTok and a reel, to talk about how I create the puzzles, which was one of the questions, or a couple of questions that I got as well. So I'll do that now. So the first thing that I do when I'm trying to create these puzzles for my escape rooms is to start with how they will exit, how they'll get out. So you need to have an idea of how you want your students to escape the room. Now you need to think about this in terms of a game, because I know that we are thinking about our learning objectives, what we want them to learn, how we want them to go about with the lesson, but you still need to think about the game objectives as well. So the exit is the thing that I start with in mind. I start with the exit. And then you need to plan out a route, a way for them to progress through the game, almost like a story. Now this is where your learning objectives will feed back into the game. So I will show you mine. I'll show you mine. But be prepared, because anyone that knows me will know that A, I have terrible handwriting, and B, I'm very, very messy. So this, I'll show it to each person, to each camera in turn. This is my flowchart of the story of how people get out of one of my rooms. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. As you can see, it's a complete mess. So you need to think of it like a story, and I tend to work backwards. So I want them to know. I'll talk about my teacher escape room as an example, because it's the easiest one, and a lot of people, I hope most of you will have played it. I want you to escape the school. That's the final goal. And to escape the school, I want you to have learnt how to use gamification in your classroom and how escape rooms can help you. So to do that, you're going to have to gain some knowledge. So to do that, I want you to turn on the computer and get the knowledge from the computer. A fake computer, not your real computer. So going back again, you're going to need to turn the computer on with a question. Now, I want you to find out the name of what students, the name of the name that's given to students who are used to this type of technology. So to do that, I want you to go and look at the microscope. So I'm going to go back again. I'm going to think, how are they going to turn on the microscope? So you can see you take a step back each time, which is how you end up with a flowchart like this, where not a lot is, nothing is left unaccounted for. So they look at this and they get this, and then they look at this and they get this. They get this piece of knowledge from here, and they get this piece of knowledge from here, and they use it to do this. And then that gives them the key or the thing they need to get to here. So do it like a story. And it doesn't have to be in a really intense, amazing story. It can be a very simple story. For example, they need the key to the green cupboard. They open the cupboard with oil. They get the oil from the mechanic. The mechanic wants a radio because he's bored. You get a radio from the fan who's standing at the side. This is an actual game I've made. Who's standing at the side. The radio doesn't work. It needs batteries. You need to get batteries from the race car driver. You need to get an autograph. It's a story, but it's a very dull story if said the right way. But when you're playing it, it takes all the parts and it gathers the knowledge and you use it to create this game. So that's kind of the thought process that goes into the flowchart. That's number 2. The third thing is that you need to mix up the puzzles, because I think a lot of people start with just one idea. They're going to, the coffee cup, for example, you're going to get a coffee cup, give it to the teacher. So that's your puzzle. And then you'll do a similar thing. You need to get the radio, give it to the mechanic. You need to get the autographs, give it to the fan. And that becomes the only puzzle you use. But there's so many that you can use in these types of games. You can have puzzles where they move things around and fit them together to show a picture or a puzzle piece or a ripped map or something like that. You can use talking to people, have characters. They're called non-player characters, NPC, in gaming. And it's a person that is there that you don't get to control, but you can talk to, and they'll give you clues, they'll give you knowledge, or they might be a puzzle themselves. They want to be told something in particular so that you will, so that they get an answer from you. So if you do that, you'll be able to move on to the next part of the game. So this is another type of puzzle that's not just picking up objects and giving them somewhere else. Another type of puzzle will be the puzzles of combining objects together. For example, in my teacher room, you have to make a cake. You need to combine flour with eggs. They're objects that you pick up, but you don't use them on other things. You actually combine them together. Another type of puzzle that is quite good to think about is hidden clues. Now this one's really good because it helps you to incorporate chunks of text that you might want them to read. This is quite good for escape rooms that require things like history, or escape rooms that need to be focused on a lot of information that has to be read together. A passage of text. So they need to read the text to look for clues, and those clues will be needed to answer a question somewhere else. Maybe turn on a computer, maybe turn on the coffee machine, whatever it is that's going to be the puzzle. That's a tough. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying use different kind of puzzles. And finally, your puzzles need to make logical sense. They need to be logical, because sometimes in the world of your game, things aren't logical. Like the tree might talk, for example, and the tree might say, like, he's thirsty and you need to get him some water. So you'd go off and you find a tap and you fill up the tap. All of these things require knowledge to get done, but beside the point. And you fill up the tap and you tip it on the tree, and then the tree gives you whatever it gives you. That makes logical sense, because a tree would want water. Even though the tree talks and that's not logical, you still have to have the frame of mind that the player can understand what to do next. If someone is thirsty, you give them water. It's a tree, it's not a person. It still makes logical sense that they've told you they're thirsty. You can go and get some water. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that's number 4. So that's basically the whole way that I create my puzzles. I do that. I start with the framework. I go through the flowing of them, and I get there eventually. So I know that there's some comments on this one, which I've forgotten. Facebook or Twitter, whatever you are. Sorry, this person here. Twitter, I think. So I know that there's some comments, but I will be answering them later, because I've kind of flown through all of that. So if you have any questions, please ask. I'm happy to answer anything you have. And please have a go at playing my game if you haven't already at teacherescaperooms.com. I'm on Instagram all the time, so that's the best place to contact me if you would like to have a chat. Please do. I will be live again next week, and hopefully next week I'll be more on time. Or I might be at this sort of time, and sorry. That's my life. But I was much more organised this week. I printed out your questions. I'm very proud of myself. Okay, have the lovely rest of your weekend, and I will speak to you all very, very soon. Okay, I'm going to end everybody separately.